Hello and welcome to the Ice Guys. This is the show that takes you into the world of the National Hockey League. Every game, every day, from a betting perspective. With pro sports handicappers, Ian Cameron, Alex B. Smith, and various guests from the world of hockey and sports betting. And now, here's your host, Ian Cameron.
Welcome to the Ice Guys, Tuesday, May 5th, Cinco de Mayo. Happy Cinco de Mayo to anyone celebrating that. Ian Cameron with you. We'll have Alex B. Smith with me in just a moment. This will be Alex's last day on the show for a few days. He'll be back with us on Saturday. He's traveling home for Mother's Day weekend to be with Mom Smith back home, of course, in Chicago over the weekend. But he'll be back he'll be on later today in just a bit. We'll recap last night's 2 NHL Stanley Cup playoff games and then look forward to the one game tonight. That's it. Just one game on tap tonight. Game 2 between the Minnesota Wild and Colorado Avalanche. Man, what do they have in store for an encore after 15 goals between the two teams in Game 1? We'll get to that game in just a moment. First, we'll look back on what we saw last night. And wow, what a start out of the gate for the Philadelphia Flyers. We're all writing them off. We're all saying it's over. We're all saying it's going to be a short series. And then all of a sudden, bam, 2-0 Flyers early in the first period, and suddenly quieted the building there, Lenovo Center, and people wondering, holy mackerel, maybe the Philadelphia Flyers started to hear about the fact that this series is over before it's even started. And they had that strong start, and give them credit. And overall, in the course of the game, you could tell Philadelphia was much more comfortable in that game last night. They looked totally out of sorts, totally overwhelmed in Game 1. And to their credit, we saw significant improvement from the Philadelphia Flyers last night in Game 2. It certainly helped their cause getting off to a good 2-0 start. But at the end of the day, they can't hold the lead, and it ends up being another loss in the series in a game that they, played much better in than they did in Game 1. But at the end of the day, you don't get a result out of it because you end up going home down 2-0 last night. And, I think Philadelphia's problem was, what I liked about Philadelphia was they moved the puck quicker. Okay, Carolina just takes away time and space. We've talked about this. Their puck pressure's outstanding. They were moving the puck a little quicker. We can't let shooters get in shooting lanes. We can't put ourselves in a spot where we're telegraphing everything. You can't just take a pass, stop the puck, and then shoot. Sometimes a one-timer has to work. Sometimes you have to do a touch pass just to get open up lanes in the offensive zone so that you try to break down the defensive coverage in the D zone. And I think Philadelphia did a little bit better job of that last night because it looked like when they had the puck in Game 1, they were moving in slow motion. Game 2, they did a much better job of that. I thought Sean Couturier, the captain, was the best player for the Flyers last night. He was outstanding, got the second goal to make it 2-0. But Carolina, I think the Ehlers goal on the power play, which was a great couple of assists there by Keandre Miller and Jackson Blake, who had a tremendous game. That whole line had another very strong game. And yes, finally, Logan Stankoven didn't score a goal, but I thought he still had a pretty solid game for Carolina, and that Blake Hall-Stankoven line was very solid. Jarvis ties it in the third period. The one thing that you worry about, too, for Philadelphia is they got outshot 24-15 in the last two periods. Again, you've got to try to extend margin against Carolina. It's not easy to do that because they have the puck a lot. They always seem to outshoot the opponent. But, Carolina, you got to try to not, you got to generate something when you have the lead like Philadelphia did. They just couldn't get it past 2 goals. They couldn't get that third goal. And that ended up being to their detriment in that loss last night. I'll say this, though. Carolina in the overtime, they were a little fortuitous to win. I mean, Philadelphia, you could make a case Philadelphia's best period of that entire game was overtime. They outshot the Hurricanes 15-8. They had the better of the chances. I thought they had the better of the offensive zone time. And I thought there were times in overtime, I'm like, Philly's really coming on here. And they're kind of taking it to Carolina. Maybe they're going to get this thing tied. And boy, oh boy, the one player that's going to have nightmares about the chance he had in overtime that he did not finish is Travis Konechny. He talked about it in the postgame press conference. He had a clear-cut, stone-cold breakaway on Frederik Andersen one-on-one with the goaltender, and he couldn't even put the puck on the net. Missed the net completely. It just gut-wrenching if you're a Flyer fan, because that was your golden opportunity. That really was your chance to win that game last night. And Konechny, like I said, he didn't shy away from talking about it post-game. He said, I just missed the net. I got to hit the net. I got to convert there on that chance. A golden chance that went by the wayside. And, of course, later on in the overtime, in a net mouth scramble, Taylor Hall ends up finding the loose puck, slams it home for the overtime winner, and Carolina goes up 2-0 in the series with a 3-2 victory. Kind of a tough beat if you had the over. I don't know how many people had the over. Certainly I didn't, but I mean, it was 2-1 after the first period, and obviously you only get the one goal from Jarvis after that, and it still falls below 5.5. So that's a tough beat. As a reminder, too, if you're going to look at overs in this series, stick to first period, because the first period over is actually 2-0 in this series so far. And the officiating was hideous. And I don't want to get into all the Flyers got screwed, the Canes got screwed more. No, the officiating was equally bad on both sides last night. It was a penalty parade. It was insane, some of the shit that was called in that game. Be better, referees. I mean, you just took over a game that didn't. We don't want referees to become the show. We're not paying admission to see you guys put your fucking arm up in the air all night, okay? Let the game frickin' breathe. Let it flow. Don't call every little ticky-tack, little hold, little slash. You know why Game 6-7 of Montreal-Tampa Bay was so good Sunday night? Because the referees got the hell out of the way for the most part. And credit to Wes McCauley and Chris Rooney, two of the veteran refs in the NHL who officiated that Game 7 for doing that. They realized this game, as seasons are on the line here, don't get in the way. And last night, unfortunately, the referees got in the way in that game and marred what was otherwise a pretty entertaining hockey game between the Flyers and the Hurricanes. But that's a gut punch for the Flyers. They did so many better things in Game 2, and all they have to show for it is another L and going home back to Philly down 2-0 in the series. And for the Carolina Hurricanes, who, by the way, finally trailed for the first time in a game in these Stanley Cup playoffs last night with that 2-0 deficit, but still undefeated in the playoffs, 6-0 to begin the postseason for the Hurricanes. We got Alex B. Smith in the house. This is his last show for the until the weekend. But Alex, welcome in. Thoughts on last night? One that got away for the Philadelphia Flyers, because I'm telling you, that overtime, they were coming, they were pressing, and then to lose it like that's pretty tough.
Yeah, that except they approached the game in the beginning of it as if, like you said, everybody had been hearing the press clippings, and we all been saying is, oh, this is a pretty much a sweep or a 5-game series at best. And they come out hot, and it just seemed like all of their energy was pretty much thrown out in that first period. And then, like I said, they were able to get enough momentum in that overtime to try and get something going. But Carolina just too strong of a team, and now for them to get to go to Philly with a 2-0 lead, it still gives life to the Flyers. I don't think this is a Flyers team that certainly we've seen them play a tough game at home. And that wouldn't shock me if they get one of these 2 wins. But as far as the full series goes, it still seems like this is Carolina's to win or lose. Like I said, to have that kind of a rollout, if you're Philly, you're supposed to win that game. And you can't afford to play the style that you played against Pittsburgh, that shutdown kind of style, because this is a Carolina team that will find ways to still chip at you and get, like I said, that 2-1 goal made a world of difference. Because that had it been 3-0 Flyers, then you could expect them to maybe sit on it, play more of a defensive style like we saw against Pittsburgh in that first round. Now you really can't do that, and I don't think there's ever going to be a time where they'll be comfortable enough to sit back and play their style of hockey. I think Carolina is still going to find their way to chip in and command the style of play moving forward. So, like you said, it's a tough one to not get a W for, but for Carolina, like I said, things still rolling as usual. And now you just need 2 more in this series to advance.
I do want to spend a minute talking about Taylor Hall. He has been great in these playoffs for Carolina. Not good, great. And this is some of the best hockey he's played in many years. And he's doing shit in these playoffs for them. We always knew he could score goals. We knew he was a good offensive player. We knew he could put up points. We knew he could do that for a hockey team. What we didn't know is he was willing to roll up the sleeves, get grimy, get physical, get tough, and do the hard things it takes to win hockey games in the Stanley Cup playoffs, because that's been his problem in the past. He's played soft. He hasn't played physical enough. He has at times disappeared in postseasons past, but he's bringing the offensive production here in the playoffs so far. He's bringing physicality and slamming, hitting people all over the ice to the likes I've never seen out of him in all of his years. He's playing that big physical brand of playoff hockey, and he was soft. He would not throw his weight around in the past. And so this is clearly a later in his career, maybe maturity's part of it, correction and adjustment in his style of play to help his team and be a better playoff player. He's made that, and look at block. What a shot block he had last. Are you kidding me? Taylor Hall was not blocking that shot 5-6 years ago. I'm telling you. I'm here to tell you he was not doing that. No, not a chance. Not a freaking chance. Taylor Hall was going to block that shot 5-6 years ago, but he had it's like a kick save he made and it was a prime scoring chance the Flyers had last night. And there's Taylor Hall blocking the shot. He has transformed his game. He has adapted. He has looked himself in the mirror and said, there's things I got to fix if I'm going to be the impact performer in April, May, and June that I've been in, say, October, November. He's become a physical player. He's become a much harder player, tougher player to play against. He's not shying away. He's not playing scared. He's not playing timid. He's not playing soft anymore. You've got to give Taylor Hall a ton of credit because this is a different, much improved playoff version of Taylor Hall right now, and I've never seen it out of him before. And this development for Carolina is another of many reasons why this team could very easily win the East, very easily be in the Stanley Cup final, and very easily win the Stanley Cup this year. And Freddie Anderson, again, another outstanding night from him. Like, he was excellent again. And that's all we were worried about. Could Freddie Anderson turn regular season struggles into playoff success and flip that switch? He has done that.
Yeah.
Anything you thought we saw from Anderson, throw it away. He has been a different goaltender here in the playoffs, and I wasn't sure he would be. So that's a credit to Freddie Anderson. He deserved all the criticism in the regular season, but he deserves all the praise right now for the way he's playing. And like I said, Carolina, outstanding. Yeah, I did take a shot with Taylor Hall to lead the series in points, and I may not have done that if not for David, our good buddy from Raleigh, who knows that team inside and out, Carolina Hurricane fan. He really liked that, and he kind of twisted my arm to bet it. And it was 33-1, Taylor Hall to lead the series in points. And he's got a shot. Jackson Blake's going to have a shot probably to win that too, because he had a 2-point night last night for the Hurricanes. The other game, it was a very entertaining game. Kind of hurt me from a betting perspective, other than the big news, of course. The best part of it was Brett Howden, of course, plus 350, bargain bin special. He scores yet again for the Vegas Golden Knights last night. But my thought that would be a wide open game one was not the case. That being said, I mean, there were chances. It's not like Anaheim was shut down and totally held off from getting shots and getting quality looks. They had their looks. It was probably one of the better games Carter Hart's had in the playoffs. He had some good games against Utah, but he also had some subpar games against Utah in the first round. That was the best he's probably played in the entire playoffs. He had an excellent night for the Vegas Golden Knights. Carter Hart was sensational. To be honest, Lukas Dostal in a losing cause was very good too. Really, really good. In fact, when it was 1-0 Vegas in the third period, there was a power play the Golden Knights had, and they had like 3 or 4 just high-quality looks, and Dostal had to make a couple of great saves. And then sure enough, 1-1, Anaheim ties it right after that. And by the way, before that, Jackson Lacombe, you shoot the fucking puck, man. Oh, my gosh, that was a gorgeous assist by Leo Carlsson. He couldn't have put it on your tape any better than that. Right there. Shoot the puck, man. It's a wide open net you had, and he ends up trying to pass it instead. That was a tough moment to see that from Jackson Lacombe. But then they tie it after the big penalty kill where Dostal was great, and you think, boy, Anaheim's got all the momentum. They've tied this game. They've actually played a pretty solid road game. And then just a real horse shit moment for the Ducks where that's icing. I mean, that's all there is to it. Even the Vegas people, writers and reporters are saying that should have been icing there on that clear in. And certainly the Anaheim player looked like beat the Vegas player to the corner. And even then, Barbashev shot it in before the red line. He didn't hit the red line when he cleared that. It should have been icing anyway. So from that standpoint, it was a bad call. Now, Anaheim's got to play through it. You can't just ease up. If you don't hear a whistle, you got to keep playing. So you can't totally absolve the Duck players that were on the ice of blame there. You got to keep playing. They stopped playing, assuming it was icing. And, of course, there's the tap in for Barbashev to give Vegas the 2-1 lead that ended up being the game-winning goal. Joel Quenneville was apoplectic on the bench. He just absolutely lost it. I still love those moments when Coach Q absolutely just loses it, and he still can after all these years. That's a tough call to go against Anaheim. Should have been icing. But nevertheless, give Vegas credit. They got a great goaltending performance. They were just a little bit more. And really where Anaheim lost the game, you could say the icing call. You could say Carter Hart was great. For the first time in these playoffs, Alex, the Anaheim power play was shut down. I mean, the power play, they had a bunch of chances. They had more power plays than Vegas, way more. And it was just the penalty kill for Vegas was terrific. And that's going to have to change. Anaheim's not winning this series if their power play gets shut down. It's not going to happen. So this is definitely going to be the adjustment and the focal point for Coach Q and the Anaheim Ducks going into Game 2. This power play that was red hot, that chewed up the Edmonton penalty kill in the first round, what happened to it last night? Because it did not perform. It did not go well. But you got to give Vegas the penalty kill a little bit of credit for that. But the power play's got to be better for Anaheim. Game 2 and move forward if they're going to win this series. But Alex, your thoughts on Game 1, Vegas-Anaheim?
Yeah, tightly contested game. That's kind of how I felt like this, most majority of this series is going to go. But like you said, there's some, glaring mistakes by Anaheim. Like you said, Lacombe not shooting that puck. You having those issues. Those are things that are going to happen for young players in these spots. You have to take advantage of those moments, and that's where we see those difference in the series, where you see a more veteran team like Vegas and a younger team that's in rarefied air with Anaheim. You're going to see it in spots like that, and so Anaheim just has to work, complete and not make those mistakes in Game 2. And like I said, I think they will be a lot more comfortable in Game 2. That's what I'm expecting. And I don't know if I'm going to be on their money line just yet, but I do lean toward them in Game 2. And I think, like I said, they just needed to get a little bit more comfortable in that series.
Oh, I will be on Anaheim in Game 2. I don't think they played that poorly last night, Anaheim, at all. They outshot Vegas by a decent amount. Their power play let them down. They had a bunch of tons of opportunities with the man advantage, and they just couldn't convert. And you got to give Hart and Vegas's penalty kill credit, but change some things, make some adjustments, and they're a good power play team. They're going to make some adjustments. They're going to throw some different looks at Vegas. Coach Q's been here before. How many playoff games has he lost and bounced back from in his career? So I do expect, like I said, Vegas. And Vegas didn't play great. I agree with Torts in the postgame. Pearl is right. Vegas didn't play that great last night. That was not a great Vegas game. So the scary part for Anaheim is Vegas could probably play a lot better than they did last night. But I think all things considered, Anaheim, Lacombe passes up a wide open net. You look at the power play opportunities they didn't score on. Anaheim's still very much in this series in my mind. And don't forget, Vegas beat Utah in Game 1, and they didn't win Game 2. Utah got out of there with a split. So keep that in mind. So I think this is still going to be a long series. That was a close game last night. Still could have went either way. And like I said, it'll be fascinating what we see for Game 2, which is a reminder and a great segue that it's Betcast night, and Game 2 for Vegas Anaheim will be part of that tomorrow night, Wednesday, May 6th, 7 p.m. Eastern. DM me for a spot on the bet or email a spot for a spot on the Betcast, 7 p.m. Eastern for Game 1, Montreal Buffalo, and Game 2, Anaheim Vegas tomorrow night. Alex will drop in for a bit as well. So again, 7 p.m. Eastern. DM or email me for a spot on the Betcast, and we will obviously send you the link for it. Preference to the Patreon members, of course. If we get to full capacity, the Patreon members will get the first spot. All right, before we get into tonight, I do want to mention, because I saved it for today, I mentioned yesterday I wanted to say something about it. This dog and pony show that was the Toronto Maple Leafs press conference yesterday, Sundin and Chayka were announced. Not a shock. Everybody's confused. What is he? Is he president of hockey ops, Sundin, vice president? They actually named it senior executive advisor of hockey operations. It's just, what the hell kind of title is that? That's the first thing. Can we just say president or vice president of hockey ops? My goodness, crazy. I mean, no wonder everyone's confused. And then, of course, John Chayka, the GM, Keith Pelly was there as well. It was, the vibes from a lot of the people that were in the venue yesterday were uneasy, tense, strange, bizarre. You know what was bizarre too? All the minions of Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, employees from the company, were apparently strewn along the room and clapping like little gophers after what Keith Pelly said something after John Chayka's speech. It's almost like they were brought in and little puppets, that dance, puppets dance. That's what it was kind of like there. And clapping, after some of these speeches. It's like, what the hell is going on here? What is this? I mean, they brought the employees in there and just had them clap after someone said something. But look, John Chayka has a checkered past. He's made mistakes. He's gotten in trouble for them with the league. He didn't do a particular job of making the Arizona Coyotes better. You have to remember he was hired at 26 years old, which to me is absolutely absurd that you'd ever hire someone that young to be a general manager. But the fact is he didn't do a good job. And then he went against the rules. He circumvented the rules, got in trouble for it, got caught, and then ended up getting banished. And obviously, look, there's been due diligence, and he's had to go. I'm sure the league has given the blessing for Toronto to hire John Chayka, or else this wouldn't be happening based on his checkered past. And I agree. And look, at the press conference like that, it can't always be sunshine, rainbows, and lollipops. Sometimes you got to ask a tough question, especially with a guy that's had some issues in the past, like John Chayka. And boy, did Steve Simmons ever ask that tough question yesterday. And I don't mind the question being asked because it should be. You've had all these, mistakes you've made in the past. You circumvented the rules a little bit, tampering allegations as well against John Chayka for his previous work as a GM. And then Steve Simmons in the question says, I spoke to about 20 executives around hockey, prominent executives. 19 of them said this was a sham hire, terrible hire, and only one person liked the hire. Okay, if you want to say that, that's fine. I've got no issues. And you want to ask the question, what did you see different in your process? I think the question, it's fine. It's good reporting to ask that kind of a question with someone having that kind of a past. What I didn't like about Simmons' line of questioning is he lost all elements of common decency, human respect to some level. I mean, when you're throwing out the descriptors like liar, con man, and salesman, which apparently some of the other executives allegedly told Steve Simmons this, and you're throwing those words out there to describe this man's character when his family's there, that's a little rough. That I can't, sign off on. That's crossing the line. But this is Steve Simmons. Dignity and respect at times, went out the window with him a long time ago. Like when Brian Burke was the GM there, and he ended up saying, he wrote a whole fucking article years ago about Brian Burke saying he's neglecting his GM duties. He's not doing his job. He's doing a bad job because he's away visiting the troops overseas. I mean, which was a goodwill gesture, to be honest with you, on Brian Burke's part to do that. I mean, he's lacked, human respect and human dignity for his fellow man before, Steve Simmons. Why do anything different now? So I just didn't like that part of it. You can ask that question. It's a good question to ask because this guy does have issues from his past, but you don't throw out those words. And the family of Chayka is right there. Really? And you got to throw out liar and con man and salesman. Have some fucking human decency, man. Just a little. Cripe. A little respect. A little dignity, for crying out loud. But you don't get that from Steve Simmons. You never have. You never will. I'm wasting my breath. You're never going to get it from him. But that was a disappointing part of that. But the whole thing was it felt like it was tense. It felt like the only person that came off well in that was Sundin. Pelly was awful. And I know it's a question that, Steve Simmons throwing from the top rope with that tough question. But Keith Pelly handled that incredibly poorly, incredibly poorly. It's almost like he was stunned that he was going to get asked that. You see the man in the room. I'm sure you're aware of some of the things he was posting. You got to be ready to handle that question a little better than that. I thought Keith Pelly answered it horribly. So this thing, I don't know. I'm worried about it for the Leafs. The only person I'm going to give a little shred of hope for is Sundin, because Sundin's a man of class. He's a great player in his day. He loves the Leafs. He'll do anything he can to put a winning product on the ice for this franchise. But at the end of the day, he doesn't have much as far as the managerial experience is concerned. But like I said, that whole press conference, Alex, you watched that. It was just, whoa, almost like a circus and a carnival act. I'm serious. I mean, so not a good now, again, this is going to be forgotten if John Chayka somehow comes in here, does a phenomenal job, and in 3 years they're in a Stanley Cup final or whatever, 4 years. We're not going to talk about this press conference being so silly. But right now, there's questions everywhere right now about whether this is going to work. It was just one of the more bizarre press conferences I've seen. And like I said, the Leafs are definitely going off the board with Matt Sundin and John Chayka in the front office. Let me tell you that.
Yeah, it looks like a complete shit show. It reminds me of like a Hawks hire from the early 2000s. Like when here comes Bob Pulford again being the GM, or here comes some random guy that they're pulling in as a head coach. It had that kind of vibe and feel to it. I watched that press conference later in the evening and stuff. It just seems like the Leafs are just kind of scrambling. And like you said, maybe it was a little harsh to word it that way, but at the same time, if you got 19 or 20 executives that have used those adjectives and used those words to describe this guy, then what, you got to make that kind of known, and I think that emphasis needed to be put on that question, because it's like, what the fuck are you doing? That's really what he wanted to ask, and I'm sure he wanted to show a little more tact and not just say those exact words. But that's kind of the way I think Simmons was wording that question is, what are you guys actually doing here? What is the end goal? What is this going to really accomplish? So I think this is probably going to be a downward move more than likely for the Leafs than an upward move.
If you're a Leaf fan, you know what you're praying for? You're playing for a reverse situation here, because for 20 years now, it feels like you've won the press, like the press conferences for introducing coaches and GMs all these years for the Leafs. People have actually liked them and said, whoa, I liked what I was hearing there. And maybe we're going to see some results now, and this organization move in the upward direction based on this press conference. And yet you didn't get the results. You didn't get the playoff series wins. You haven't gotten your Stanley Cup yet. Even when you like maybe the introductory press conference with Shanahan all those years ago, and Lou Lamoriello and Kyle Dubas and Mike Babcock and Sheldon Keefe and just all these freaking coaches and GMs and front office people that have been shuttled in and out of this franchise. And you were coming out of the introductory press conference with a little optimism if you're a Leaf fan, and then the results just wouldn't follow. Maybe this is going to be a miracle reverse situation where this time you hated the press conference. You thought it was a debacle, this press conference, and now maybe you're going to get the results and the better results, and the reverse is going to happen. So you lose the press conference instead of win it, but you're going to have winning results now on the ice. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but that's the kind of hope you're clinging to. Well, we liked the press conferences all these years and what people said and the way it sounded and the way it came off, and we didn't get the results. But now this press conference, we hate the way it sounded. We hate the way it came off. Maybe now it's going to be the opposite. Now we're going to start getting the results here, better results for the team on the ice. But nevertheless, it was a very, very bizarre look with that press conference yesterday, no question. All right, let's get into today. We've got, and by the way, take a look at some of those Tampa Bay press conference clips today from Andrei Vasilevskiy. He was, they brought up the Cooper comment about the hockey gods were not with us and they were on the other team's side in Game 7, and Vasilevskiy looked disgusted when they brought that up. Almost like he completely disagreed with Cooper's interpretation of the way things went. Almost like Vasilevskiy was like, we can't just chalk this up to the hockey gods. So it was very, very fascinating that he was that visibly, disgusted. He was. Look at the clip from earlier today. He was disgusted when they brought up the Cooper comment about the hockey gods not being with them in Game 7 against Montreal. I found that was very fascinating to see that kind of reaction from Andrei Vasilevskiy. I'm not going to suggest there's suddenly a little bit of a Cooper and player fracture in Tampa, but, they've been together a long time, this core and Cooper. And, sometimes with a long marriage, it gets stale. You get a little tired of the idiosyncrasies of the wife or the husband in this case in a marriage. Are we getting some of that in Tampa with Cooper and the play? I mean, Vasilevskiy looked utterly disgusted and pissed when he had to hear the reporter bring up Cooper said the hockey gods were not. He like, are you kidding me? I almost thought he said, you kidding me under his breath. So I'm wondering, is there just this, maybe the honeymoon, Cooper and the players and everything's great. We've heard all these things. Cooper's just a great players coach and all that. But is there finally a little bit of they've been together for so long, Alex, the core and Cooper. Is it a legit question to ask that maybe things are running its course a bit?
Possible. It's entirely possible. And we always talk about this with coaches. You lose that room, your voice gets thrown in. That could potentially be the case at some point with all these veterans who have been around there that long.
Yeah. I know, and look, they're not firing him. That's not happening. Not
No,
certainly
no,
this.
no. We're not getting to that point. But I'm just saying. But if you start losing if your voice starts losing the room, then that is the next step. So we'll see.
Like I said, it was just very, very interesting to
I'd be
see.
concerned if Tampa has a bad start next year.
Yeah, yeah, I know.
You know?
Yeah. It was just wow. It was pretty amazing to see that reaction from Vasi. It made me thought, boy, is there something going on there behind the scenes? But like I said, they still have been in the playoffs every year. So like I said, and he's not going anywhere anytime soon. It would take a really bad season to begin next year for this to even become potential. Moving on from Cooper. And by the way, he'd be scooped up in a heartbeat. If that were to ever happen. All right, game 2. Here we go. Minnesota, Colorado. We got Colorado minus 200 home favorite, 6.5 the total. Colorado up 1-0 in this series. I mean, this is kind of like Philly, Carolina last night. Like this, actually, I could see this game being a lot like Philly, Carolina last night, where Minnesota, after losing 9-6, they're going to play hard. They're going to play better this time around. I do believe that. But at the end of the day, Carolina found a way to beat Philly last night after a bad start. Why? Because they're just better than Philadelphia. And with this series here, Minnesota's probably going to come out and have a really flying start here. John Hines is going to go to the goalie switch tactic here. Philip Gustafsson, what's troubling you, Gus? He's going to make his first playoff start here for the Minnesota Wild. That's kind of a tough blow for Volstead. The kid's played so well in these playoffs. He has one stinker, one bad game, and it was. I mean, he gave up way more soft goals than Wedgwood did in that crazy 9-6 game. I think there was more suspect goals that he allowed compared to Wedgwood. But still, to get the hook after one bad game when you've played so well, and here comes Philip Gustafsson, it's a bit of a tough pill for the kid to swallow here going into game 2. What I will say, and I made the point of this on Twitter X earlier, the goalie switches, other than Jari for Edmonton in the first round, and he played well when he replaced Ingram. He probably should have won that game, but they ended up losing in overtime. He still played well. The goalie change decisions worked out for most teams in the first round. Look at what it did for Buffalo when UPL was replaced by Alex Lyon in game 3, and they didn't look back, and Lyon played great, especially in the first game. They got the first game bump, too. Artur Shilovs, when he replaced Skinner for the Pittsburgh Penguins in the first round, they got a bump from it. They were down 3-0. They won game 5. They won game 6 in that series. Game 4, I should say, to stay alive in game 5, and got it to game 6. And Shilovs gave them a little bit of a boost when Muse decided to change goalies. So that's what Hines is hoping for, that this gives Minnesota a similar bump here tonight, going to Philip Gustafsson. Problem is, I still think Colorado just looks better, deeper, and I'm still bothered, Alex, by Minnesota. Well, we'll have to see about Josh Manson. Thanks for nothing, Jared Bednar. I watched his press conference earlier today. Did absolutely nothing to help us out with the lineup. He said, goalie, we're not telling you. No personnel questions. Josh Manson, we don't know. He may be back. He may not be back. That's another thing, too. That's why that game was kind of helter-skelter. Josh Manson is missed on the blue line. Shot blocker, shut down defender. Didn't play in game 1. We'll see if he's back here for the Avalanche tonight in game 2. But we didn't get any hints from Jared Bednar about whether it will be Wedgwood again. I think Wedgwood's got to start again. He still hasn't lost in the playoffs so far, 5-0. You don't change that. And I know he didn't divulge who's going to be the goalie tonight, but I'm pretty sure he's going to stick to Wedgwood here. And we'll see if Manson's back for Colorado. Meanwhile, for Minnesota, Brodin is still out, and Eriksson Ek is still out. It hurts, man. Brodin hurts, and Eriksson Ek really hurts. And then I saw this stat floating around about Minnesota's playoff record without Joel Eriksson Ek. I think it's 1-7 in their last 8 playoff games without Joel Eriksson Ek. That's not something you can just overlook and sweep under the carpet. That's a real big deal. 1-7 Minnesota, their last 8 playoff games without Joel Eriksson Ek in the lineup. That's a concern for me. So there's a lot of elements that say Minnesota's going to come out hot. I don't hate Minnesota first goal, first period. I might even dabble in that here because we saw that with Philly last night. I don't think I can trust them for a 60-minute game, though, because I just feel without Eriksson Ek, they suffer much more mightily defensively. without Joel Eriksson Ek. They miss his offense too, but it's his defense. It's his face-off prowess. It's all the little things he brings from the center ice spot that they miss. And you see the record. The record is what it is. Proof's in the pudding, right? 1-7 streak in the playoffs without Joel Eriksson Ek in the lineup. So I think I will take a shot with Minnesota first goal, first period, but that's probably it. I mean, I'm not trusting them full game here in this one. Obviously I love the over in game one. And I still think we could see goals tonight, but I'm very concerned about really going big on an over when both teams are coming off that kind of game. 9-6, and all I heard from Bednar was we got to tighten it up. All I heard from Hines was we got to tighten it up here tonight. And, I could see this maybe falling in that 3-1, 4-1, 4-2 type of range. So I'm not bullish on the over tonight. I'm sure as hell not betting under, though. I'm not doing that either because, as I've said, if Manson's out again, that's a negative defensively for Colorado. Brodin and Eriksson Ek out again for Minnesota. That's a negative defensively for Minnesota. So, if you get the same personnel issues both teams had in game one, they could say all they want. They got to tighten it up. They got to prove it to me first on the ice. So I'm probably going to stay off a lot of the total here tonight when it's all said and done. I do have a lot of props I like, which I'll get to in a minute. But Alex, we'll start with you. What do you think game two, Minnesota, Colorado?
Yeah, keep it simple. I like Wild to get first goal, first period, plus 165, and I like both teams to score in the first, plus 172. I think we could see that kind of pace early, but then I think things might turn around and slow down a little bit. Like I said, with how crazy of a game that first game was, I certainly don't think we're going to see another 15-goal kind of back and forth piece. But it wouldn't shock me if this one still finds a way to get over the total. Like I said, Colorado, this is still a team that you don't want to get into a boat race with. And yes, Minnesota's got a lot of offensive talent, but that's not the style of play you want to have if you want to win this series if you're John Hines and company. So I do think we get goals early. I do think the Wild jump out hot early and get that first goal, but it wouldn't shock me at all for the Avalanche to come back with that counter punch within that first period.
Yeah, I think it's a great Matt Boldy shot night, Robert. I'm with you on that. Over 3.5 shots. He's been almost automatic going over 3.5 shots, but he finally didn't go over that number in game one of this series. But he was the one of the Wild that I don't mind both teams to score. This actually could be, because I don't want to bet over 6.5 pregame, and I'm not going to bet over 6.5 pregame. But this could be a Matty Rob special look, because I could see the 2 goals early, maybe a 1-1 type of first period, and get the over 1.5 and tie it up with over 5.5. I still think it's got a good shot to get over 5.5 when it's all said and done. But I do expect, when you have 15 goals, there's no way the coaches aren't coming into the next playoff game emphasizing defense. There's just no way they're not doing that. So that's why I'm a little hesitant to bet over 5.5 here. As far as props, like I said, I like Boldy over 3.5 shots. Zuccarello and Lehkonen have gone over 1.5 shots in 3 straight games. Vladimir Tarasenko, keep an eye on him. His shots is only over 1.5. He's gone over that in 2 straight games for the Wild. Marty Necas, over 2.5 shots in 2 straight games. Nathan McKinnon, over 3.5 shots in 2 straight games. Ryan Hartman, okay, he went over his shot prop in game 1. And with the injury situation for Minnesota with Eriksson Ek out, Hartman's still centering Zuccarello and Kaprizov. And this is someone that's going to probably be involved a lot more in shooting the puck. He had 7 shots on goal in game 1 against Colorado. So I really think this is a good Ryan Hartman night. Goal prop, assist prop, point prop, shots on goal over. I think he's going to have to factor into this one here tonight for the Minnesota Wild. Be a factor here in this game. And he was a factor in that 9-6 game for the Wild. He scored a goal in that game for the Wild. I believe it was the goal that made it 3-2 at the time, late in the first period. So, yeah, Ryan Hartman props make a ton of sense for me here, certainly in this game tonight. Matt Boldy and Zuccarello, you can bet his point prop because he's gotten a point in 5 straight games. It's still a reasonable price at around minus 135. Gabe Landeskog and Devon Taves for the Colorado Avalanche have had a point in 4 straight games. You only have to lay $1.30 with Gabe Landeskog and close to even money with Devon Taves. Lehkonen, 3 straight games with a point. Tarasenko, we've talked about how he's picked it up for Minnesota. 3 straight games with a point for him. And those are all reasonable prices. Nazem Kadri, Sam Malinsky for the Avs, 2-game point streaks. They're reasonable as far as their prices to get a point here in this game tonight as well. So there you go. A great stat from Dre. Good to see Dre. Exotic wagers. Tarasenko, over 1.5 shots on goal. 11 of the last 12 with Eck out of the lineup. So again, Hartman, Tarasenko are two clear candidates here. Guys that are going to have undervalued props tonight. Shots on goal, goal prop, assist prop, and points prop because of the absence of Joel Eriksson Ek for Minnesota. So that's why looking in that direction makes sense. Goal props. We talked about Tarasenko. He scored in back-to-back games. How do you not take it? Cale Makar, 3 straight games with a goal. He clearly has emphasized more and more as these playoffs have gone on, going back to the end of the Los Angeles series, get involved more, shoot the puck more, try to get involved in the play, get involved in the offense more, be a little bit more selfish, even though I'm a great passer. Shoot that puck when I get the opportunity. And he had a couple of just bullet shots for goals in game 1 against Minnesota. So, riding the 3-game goal scoring streak for Cale Makar, why not? You should, especially still getting plus 340 or so. Tarasenko, like I said, plus 430 for him to find the back of the net. He scored in 2 straight games. Quinn Hughes and Devon Taves have scored in 2 straight games. So 2 more blue liners. And this is going to be one of those series, too, where I think they realize, look, we got to open things up and we got to have our defense involved in the offense, both teams. So Makar, Hughes, and Taves. It's rare you see this in a playoff series going into a playoff game. But Cale Makar, Quinn Hughes, and Devon Taves, they are all on multi-game goal-scoring streaks for their teams going into this one. So, like I said, those are all juicy props, in my opinion, and at great prices. Talked about how Hartman's probably live here in this game as well. Factor that in. So there's some really good prop looks here tonight when it comes to the Wild and the Avs. Like I said, I'm only going in on Minnesota first goal, first period, maybe a little bit on a over 1.5, over 5.5 same game parlay, and everything else for tonight's going to be props for me, and a lot of props I like here. Logan O'Connor's a good one too, Nick. I mean, he did have a lot of chances last game. 5th in expected goals last game at 5-on-5. I'm still mystified that 9 goals for Colorado and Gabe Landeskog, couldn't score in any of them there in game 1. But nevertheless, I still think he could be worth a look. But Logan O'Connor, if you're really looking for value, plus 725, I noticed that. He was up there as far as generating chances and expected goals for the Avs in game 1. We'll see if maybe he can find a little pay dirt here tonight in game 2. All right, there you have it. Alex, of course, is back Saturday after today's show, so we'll give him the chance to mention anything he likes for Wednesday with Montreal-Buffalo game 1, or the series for that matter, if there's any series bets he likes for Montreal-Buffalo, and also game 2, look ahead, Vegas-Anaheim. Anything for Wednesday, Alex?
I'll be fully honest. I have not gotten to handicapping the series as far as that goes. I like this to be a long series. I don't know if I'm necessarily going to play 6 to 7 game split. This might be one where I take it game by game. But as of now, I don't have any futures plays with that Buffalo and Montreal. Like trying to get ready to get out of town. As far as game 2 goes, I'm leaning toward Anaheim. Like I said, I think, like I said, we get a little bit more comfortable within that series. Could jump out early. Definitely a spot where I had that first period over, didn't cash, but I definitely could see where there's going to be a little bit more energy early in that game. So more than likely we'll be on Anaheim money line, first period over. Of course, keep checking Patreon throughout the week. All of my plays will be up there, even though I won't be on the show again for the next couple of days. But those are just my looks as of right now.
Good stuff. Yeah, of course, tomorrow on the show, I'll mention everything that I'm going to be betting game 1 and the series. I'm going to have a bunch of series bets too. Yes, I am leaning to the 6-7 game, approach with that Montreal Buffalo. I haven't totally locked in on that yet, but I am leaning that way. And I'll have a bunch of series long, top goal score, top point score, over under goals and points for the series. We'll have a bunch of those for Habs and Sabres, and I'll mention those tomorrow on the show. Great stuff. Shout out to everyone in the chat. Hit the like button if you haven't done so already. Check out wizardsportspicks.com, of course, NHL playoffs, NBA playoffs, MLB, on a daily basis. Profitable NHL and NBA seasons for me on the website, so check it out, wizardsportspicks.com. And, of course, patreon.com/Ice Guys, $10 per month. Goalie charts, totals charts, daily betting card, sides, totals, player props posted each and every day on the Patreon page. We have 2 exclusive live betcasts coming up for you next week in the later part of the second round for Patreon members only. So make sure you get on board before that. And of course, Wednesday night this week, tomorrow night, that is, free for all Betcast, 7 p.m. Eastern. DM or email me for a spot on the Betcast. But get to the Patreon page. Your membership goes a long way to supporting the show and keeping it going long term. Get on board, just $10 per month over at patreon.com/iceguys.
And also check out the Ice Guys store, iceguys.myspreadshop.com. You have until midnight tonight Eastern to save 25% on all orders and items at the store. Hit the home redeem button at the home page, add your items to the cart. 25% will be taken at checkout. It's springtime. It's getting warm out. It's a great time to grab a couple of t-shirts, some caps, and maybe a hoodie. You can save 25% until midnight tonight Eastern. That's over at iceguys.myspreadshop.com.
All right, bargain bin special of the night and best bets coming up right after we hear from our great Ice Guy sponsors.
Wizard Sports Picks, featuring the finest handicappers in the universe. Sharp insights, trusted picks, and relentless results. We strive to help you become consistent winners. This is Wizard Sports Picks.
All right, bargain bin special of the night with the one game, the only game. Get used to this. When we get to conference finals, we're only going to have one game a night. So start getting used to this as we're winding down slowly but surely. Bargain bin special of the night here for Minnesota, Colorado. Alex, what do you got?
Let's look at Big Valerie Nichushkin to get a goal here. You get anytime goal scorer over at FanDuel plus 330. The price I like. This is a guy we've cashed with quite often. So Valerie Nichushkin, anytime goal scorer, that'll be my bargain bin special for the night.
I keep saying he's got to get going at some point. We'll see if hopefully tonight's the night. Call on me, Valerie. Valerie Nichushkin for Colorado, plus 330 for Alex with a bargain bin special of the night. I'm going to go with two, one for each team, and I'm going to go with the two obvious choices here. I'm going to go with Vladimir Tarasenko for actually, you know what? Hold on. I've changed my mind. If he is bargain bin worthy, Tarasenko's a good choice too, but if he's bargain bin price worthy, I think I like Ryan Hartman just a little bit more because he's up there on that top line. He's plus 330. Sign me up for Ryan Hartman. Ryan Hartman for Minnesota, plus 330 for my Minnesota bargain bin special. My Colorado bargain bin special, we're going to take Cale. All hail Cale. Cale Makar, 3 straight games with a goal. He's been shooting the puck a lot, ripping puck, plus 340, the best price for him. Looking for 4 straight games with a goal. Cale Makar from the blue line. So Ryan Hartman, Minnesota, plus 330. Cale Makar, Colorado, plus 340 for my 2 bargain bin specials here for this game 2, Minnesota, Colorado for Tuesday night. All right, best bets. Alex, what do you got for best bet?
Yeah, let's go with both teams to score in the first period. You can get that plus 172 over at FanDuel. I think we're going to see, like I said, early punch of offense, and then maybe things kind of taper down a little bit. But definitely liking goals from at least both teams in the first period there, plus 172.
All right, good stuff. You know what? Let's change it up here. How about a player prop best bet for me here for game 2 tonight? I don't do that very often, but I mentioned liking him for a bargain bin special to score a goal for the Minnesota Wild tonight. He's over 2.5 at plus 105 shots on goal tonight. Ryan Hartman. I don't think 7 shots on goal in game 1. Top line still for the Minnesota Wild. He was clearly going to the net, doing his usual shit. Ryan Hartman getting under the skin of Scott Wedgwood, and he was shooting the puck. His shot attempts were through the roof as well in game 1 the other night. Over 2.5 shots on with Joel Eriksson out. That means there's going to be more of an onus on Hartman getting involved offensively in that top line spot. So let's go with Ryan Hartman over 2.5 shots on goal, plus 105. God help me, I'm doing a shots on goal prop for a best bet. But we don't do this often, but we'll do it tonight. Ryan Hartman over 2.5 shots on goal, plus 105 for best bet. Shout out to everyone in the chat. Hit the like button. We appreciate it very much. And Alex, anything you want to add, because you'll be back Saturday. Final thoughts.
Yeah, like I said, see everybody this weekend, and like I said, I'll chip in, and I'll try and chime in for a little bit tomorrow. Get settled in for the Betcast and stuff, but I'll be on the road, and so I'll be busy this week with Mom for Mother's Day weekend. But hope everybody has a good one, and like I said, my plays will be available, of course, at Patreon. So
good stuff. Yeah, well, of course, Alex will have his Patreon plays every day, even while he's away. He'll jump in for just a little bit on the Betcast tomorrow night, and we'll see him, of course, Saturday on the Daily Show. Great stuff. And we wish you safe travels back to the Windy City.
Thanks.
Reminder, the Ice Guys is live 7 days a week, Monday to Friday, 2 p.m. Eastern, Saturday, Sunday, noon Eastern. If you can't watch the show live, download the Ice Guys podcast in audio form on all major podcast platforms, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and more. Download the Ice Guys podcast when you can't watch the show live. For Alex B. Smith, I'm Ian Cameron. Have a great Tuesday night. Enjoy the games and good luck. And we will be back Wednesday, 2 p.m. Eastern, for another edition of the Ice Guys.